that into a spreadsheet from Carroll County, 24,000 lines for every tax parcel in Carroll County, and reconstructed the tax billing calculation. And that takes some doing, because you really want to get it right, because if I could tell you what the quirk is, and maybe one or two of you will sympathize here. The problem is you've got some taxpayers with some property in the 1% category, and some in the 2% category, and some in the 3% category. And in order to figure out their tax cap credits, you've got to divvy up their deductions among all three of those, and their credits among all three of those. And that's my problem, not yours. So I did create this thing, and having created this thing, this spreadsheet, I was able to say, all right, how about if we take all of the farmland parcels and reduce their value by 13% for next year, or reduce their value by 35% for 4 or 5 years down the road. What does that then do to the total assessed values of all of the units of government in Carroll County? If they're going to continue to try to raise the same levy, what does that mean for property tax rates? How much do they go up? If their property tax rates go up, what does that mean for each individual taxpayer? How much do their tax bills go up? And if their tax bills are going up, how many of them hit their caps and create revenue losses through additional tax cap credits? So that's what I've done. So what we've got here is, in a sense, a estimate of what would have happened in 2017, which is the data we've got, had the base rate of farmland been 13% lower or 35% lower. Right, so it's not exactly a prediction of what will happen, but it's a prediction of what difference will decline in farmland assessments make for taxpayers and for units of government in Carroll County. Now, just for me to get my feet on the ground as to what Carroll County looks like, and this will be a help here in a minute. Here's a map of the townships and the city and Yeoman, Camden, Flora, Burlington towns here in Carroll County, and those are the townships. And then if we put over top of this the school corporations, you've got Twin Lakes up there, Delphi right here, Carroll Consolidated over there, and Rossville over here. So Rossville is mostly not in Carroll County. Twin Lakes, of course, is up there in Lake County as well. But Delphi Community, Delphi Consolidated, entirely within Carroll County. 1 city, 4 towns, 4 school corporations. What is that? I didn't count. 15 or so townships? 14. 14. Pretty good guess. And a county government, all right? My apologies to the library districts. I didn't have a map of them, but if you stick that on top there, you know, it becomes increasingly unreadable as you add more and more. But what we've got here then is the beginnings of what are called the taxing districts. That is, if you live in Delphi, you pay the county rate, the Deer Creek rate, the Delphi rate, and the Delphi Community Schools rate, and no doubt a library rate and a special district rate as well. Right? And so it's that rate, that sum total, that district rate, that's what counts for the tax caps, because that's the rate the taxpayer pays, and the tax caps are a cap on tax bills. And so it's the total rate that counts for that. Now, if you're outside of Delphi, then what do you pay? You pay the county rate, the Deer Creek rate, the Delphi community rate, but not the Delphi rate. So your tax rate is lower. Tax rate's higher here, tax rate's lower outside of Delphi. And likewise for the rest. I've got a picture right here, and you'll probably won't be able to read these numbers up here, but take a look at your handout. And what I have here are the estimated change in net assessed value by Carroll government unit, short-run farmland base change. So this is the 13% change. We're going to take a base rate, reduce it by 13%, figure that will reduce farmland assessments by 13%, and then for each of the local governments, we take a look at how much assessed value is farmland within each of these units, within the county, all the townships, all the towns, the school corporations, the libraries, the solid waste management district, and we say, how much will the assessed value, the net assessed value after deductions, how much will it go down measured as percentages? And the little bars right here, this is a new thing I just discovered on on Excel. I've been using Excel since it was invented back in the end of the 1980s. Whether this was a new thing that just popped up or I just wasn't aware of it, I don't know, but I think it's pretty cool because it turns your spreadsheet into a little bar chart. Right? So what do we got here? 4.4% decline in assessed value for Carroll County as a whole from this year to next. That's that 13% decline altogether. That's $52 million of assessed value that will disappear because farmland will be assessed at a lower level. So 4.4%. Now remember, that's not exactly a prediction of what will happen. I'm not predicting that that assessed value will decline by 4.4% because other assessments will probably rise between now and then. But this will mean a 4.4% subtraction from whatever that increase would have been. So it'll be 4. Now, if the increase was only going to be 2, then probably going to see a decline. But if the increase was going to be 5, then you might still see a half-point increase in assessed value. So 4.4%. For the rest, for all the townships, this is basically a measure of where farmland is most important. And so Liberty Township and Washington Township are the two townships that will see the biggest percentage reductions in assessed value. There's not much farmland in the cities and towns. I learned that. I actually grew up in New York. I was born in New York City, grew up on Long Island. Saw the light, came out here, you know. But one thing I learned out here is that there's just not much farmland in cities and towns, even in Indiana. And so the reductions here are very, very small. 0.2, 0.1 of 1%, hardly any, $143 for Camden civil tax. So that's where you see the bar. School corporations, on the other hand, school corporations, while it might be called the Delphi Community School Corporation, it includes Delphi and all this farmland. So, right, that's a 4.4% reduction right there. 5.7 for Carroll Consolidated. As you might expect, Carroll Consolidated includes Flora and Burlington, but those are relatively small towns, whereas Delphi is the big town and or the city, and it has a lot of assessed value. So home values, lots of homes, business values really do, even in a small land area like this, really can offset an awful lot of farmland that is out there. So that's what we see as far as public libraries are concerned. It's mainly at Camden-Jackson, and then not that it matters much, but Northwest Indiana, down 4.4%. So everybody's seeing reductions except for the cities or towns in assessed value. That does not mean the cities and towns are out of the woods, though. Let's remember that. But it's not because they have a lot of farmland that is losing value. All right, now here's the same thing, the same chart, if you go 35%. So now we're looking forward to 2022 or 2023 and say what happens if we subtract 35%. The total reduction, $141 million in assessed value lost for the whole county. That's 11.9%. The relative changes are exactly the same as they were before, but the percentage changes are larger. So the 11.9, almost 12% for the whole county. The biggest changes looks like Madison and Washington there at 22%. Carroll Consolidated loses 15.3%. Delphi 11.9%. And Rossville 12.2%. Camden-Jackson Library 16.1%. So again, significant loss. But again, this doesn't mean your assessed value is necessarily going to go down. It just means that there's this downward pressure or this chunk subtracted out of what might otherwise be an increase. So there still might be an increase, but it's definitely going to be a smaller increase if it's an increase at all as a result of this decline. So assessed values go down for each unit of government. Now, suppose each unit of government attempts to raise the same levy as they would have otherwise. Suppose we continue to tax at the maximum levy. What happens to the tax rates? And these are tax rates measured as dollars per $100 assessed value. So the Carroll County rate there is just a little less than 32 cents per $100 assessed value. Next year, if nothing else happened to assessed value, and you continue to raise the same levy, again, nothing has happened to the levy either, the rate would have to go up to 33 cents. So the change, a little bit less than 1.5 cents added to whatever else might be going on with the tax rate in Carroll County. Take a look at some of these other rates here. There's 1.25% or 1.25 pennies for Rock Creek Township. But clearly the biggest increases are in the school corporations right here. The county and the school corporations are seeing the biggest increases in their unit tax rates. What's the increase here? About 4 cents for Carroll, about 4 cents for all of them actually. Carroll, Delphi, Rossville, all seeing about a 4-cent increase in their property tax rates. So it's from 65 cents to 69, from 91 to 96. And let me keep emphasizing this. I mean, this is in addition to whatever other changes might be happening to the property tax rate. So it's whatever's going to happen plus 4 cents is what's likely to happen. So that's next year. What about the rates for the next 5 years with the 35% decline? And again, it's the county and the school corporations that see the biggest increases. County increase more like 4 cents. School corporation increases more like 12 cents. So over the next 5 years then, into the early 2020s, we would expect to see school corporation property tax rates about 12 cents higher than they would have been ordinarily. Whatever else is going on with their rates, I keep doing this, whatever else is going on with their rates, this will be an increase. This will be an additional 12 cents added on to that. So what do we got for the cities and towns? For Delphi, it's 1.6 cents. So not much impact on the city rates. Well, of course there isn't. They haven't got any farmland in those cities. Assessed value is not going down particularly much, so nothing much has to happen to the rates in order to continue to raise the same levy. Now, plenty of things might happen to their rates, but it won't be farmland causing the change. So that's what happens to rates. Now, let's take a look at the taxing districts, because it's the taxing districts, the sum total of those rates that the taxpayers pay. And this is what the taxing districts look like in Carroll County here in 2017. There's 19 of them all together, which means there's 19 different combinations of unit tax rates adding up to a unique total tax rate. And I've marked out where the big ones and where the smaller ones are. And as you might expect, in Delphi, that's got the highest rate, $3.40 per $100 assessed value. The folks who live in Delphi City pay 31, almost 32 cents to the county, a little more than $2 to the city, 91 cents to Delphi schools, and then 13 cents to the township and the library district. And so you add that together, you get $3.40. So that's the big one. The smallest one's right at the top there, and that's a rate under $1. And so that's one of the lowest rates in all of Indiana. Anytime you get a rate under $1, you're really probably low. In rural Adams Township, they've got the Twin Lakes School Corporation, and Twin Lakes has the lowest school rate of any in the area. Add that to the county, and all other adds up only to 98 cents per $100 assessed value. So you can see where the high rates are, where the low rates are. Well, where the high rates are, that's where those are the units that are most vulnerable to tax cap credit losses. And even though there's not much farmland in Delphi, as the overlapping unit rates go up, and Delphi's rate isn't going to change, but the county rate's going to go up, and the school rate is going to go up. The sum total of that rate is going to go up. It's going to go up from $3.40 to $3.50 or $3.60, and that means that so many of those folks are already at their caps, and so many more will be get to their caps. That's where the tax cap credits losses are going to come. So that's what the tax rate situation looks like from the point of view of the taxpayer. So here are the changes in the tax district rates. That is, when you add up the sum total of the 19 districts, here's the original rate. The green bar shows next year's rate, how much the addition to next year, and the gray bars show what's the addition by 2022 or 2023 when we get down to 1,200. So what do you see? Green bar for next year, you've got numbers as low as about 3 cents. In Jefferson and Yeoman, those are rural areas. In Twin Lakes School District, so the rate is low there. So a relatively small increase in those districts. But we look and see where are the higher increases. Rock Creek Township, taxing district, up 21 cents. And that looks like the biggest one right there. Jackson Township, up 19. What about Flora, where we are right here? It's a 19-cent increase in the tax rate paid by the taxpayers. So we started at $2.77. We're almost to $3 which makes for a whole additional category of property, business property, could be close to eligible for tax cap credits in Flora. If we look at the Delphi right there, starting at 340, that's a 19-cent increase over 5 years and a 7-cent almost increase over 1 year from 340, could go up to 360 within 5 years, in addition to whatever else might happen. So again, those are the rates paid by the taxpayers to all of the overlapping units. I should have said, just to point out, the names of these taxing districts, they're picked out by the Department of Local Government Finance, and they are based on the unit of government that best defines the taxing district, the sum total of those rates. And so when we see Delphi up here in Deer Creek, we mean the part of Deer Creek Township that is Delphi and includes the Delphi city rate. Here's Deer Creek, that's the part that does not include the Delphi city rate. You can see the difference right there. So those names right there are not the unit names, those are taxing district names. So that's the estimate as to what might happen to the tax rates that taxpayers pay. And here's an estimate as to what might happen to the taxes, the tax bills of the taxpayers in those 4 categories that we've talked about before and the total. Agriculture, you see a 5.4% decline and then a 15.8%. 5.4% decline for next year and then 15.8% for the next 5 years. You might wonder, wait a minute, there's a 13% decline in farmland assessments and a 35% decline in farmland assessments there. Why aren't farmers getting 13 and 35%? And there's 2 reasons for that. One is that as assessed value of farmland goes down, tax rates go up. And so yeah, you're paying on a lower assessed value, but you're paying at that higher rate. Now, your assessed value decline outweighs, the farmer's assessed value decline outweighs the increase in the tax rate, and so it still makes for a decline, but not the full 13% decline. Likewise, 35% decline in farmland assessments, 15.8% decline in the tax bill. The other reason is that farmland is 3/4 of the net assessed value that agriculture owns, but there's still another quarter. Buildings, houses that are classified as agricultural property but are not farmland, and the farmers, the farmland owners, who also own a house or also own a farm building, will pay higher rates on those assessments. And those assessments aren't going down. So still a significant tax reduction for farmland owners or for agriculture generally, but not the big 35%. So what happens to everybody else? Well, everybody else is now paying at these higher rates, but their assessments haven't gone down. And so next year, we expect for homeowners, and you know, the majority of voters in every county, tack on an additional 3.3% to their tax bills, along with anything else that might be happening. Over the next 5 years, tack on 9.6%. So that's 9.6% accumulating over 5 years. That is, 5 years from now, tax bill be 9.6% higher than it would have been had nothing changed. Had the assessed value of farmland not changed. So 9.6, 8.6 for other residential, that's rental housing, 8.4% for business. So in the sort of 8 to 10% range over 5 years, in about 3% range next year in additional taxes. In total, a little bit of losses. Now, what does that represent? That represents lost property tax revenue to local governments. So in terms of percentages, it's a very small loss. I guess I'll be interested to see or to hear whether you think the actual numbers, the dollar figures, are big or are small. And so here they are. Estimated tax cap credit changes by Carroll government unit, short run, farmland-based rate change. So this is the minus 13% down to 1610. And what these are my estimates of what will happen to the tax cap credits for each of these units of government. So let's take a look at Delphi here, Delphi Civil City. Delphi at the moment loses $237,000 or so to tax cap credits. That is, they have a levy that they've created, that they've levy that they're charging their taxpayers. But those taxpayers don't have to, those that are at their caps, don't have to pay that full levy. They get credits for a difference, and that means Delphi does not collect that difference. So $237,000 is what it is now, adding $17,000 next year up to $254,000 altogether. So $17,000 increase in tax cap credit losses in Delphi because of farmland assessment. Now, isn't that amazing that Delphi, even though there's no farmland in Delphi to speak of, they're one among the, in fact they are the biggest revenue losers among all of the units of government. And again, why is that? Because what counts is the total tax rate that the taxpayers are paying. Delphi shares taxpayers with the county and the school corporation. The county's got all the farmland in the county, and the school corporation's got a whole bunch of it too. Their tax rates are going to go up, even as Delphi stays the same. But as the tax rates go up in total, more taxpayers are eligible for tax cap losses, and those losses gets divvied up among all of the overlapping units, including the city. And since the city is a very large part of the total tax rate, $2 out of $340, they lose $17,075. Delphi Community School Corporation, same sort of story, although they've actually got losses in assessed value, $15,000, and then the county at $7,000, Flora at almost $5,000, and Carroll Consolidated at a little under $4,000. So this is next year's estimates. How about over 5 years with a 35% decline? And again, the same units of government, and it's just proportional as we move up. But what are the losses? Carroll County, $21,000 altogether. Delphi at a little less than $50,000, 48 right there. Delphi Schools at $47,000. Carroll Consolidated at 11, Flora at 13. In total, I should have given you the total before. Total before, $52,000 altogether in additional tax cap credits, and $154,000 for the county as a whole, going up from $525 to $679 in total tax cap credit losses. So that's, when I run those numbers through that model that I made, those are the kinds of numbers that I come up with. Now your mileage will vary, but the way this is set up, Delphi City, Delphi Schools, and the county have got to be the units of government that lose the most revenue. And so here's an estimate of what those revenues might be. All right, the takeaway on this, just about an hour. Okay, farmland base rate in Carroll County. Base rate for assessed value of farmland will fall 13%. We know that's going to happen. DLGF has announced it. From 1850 in 2018 to 1610 in 2019. And then about 35% towards 1200 by the early 2020s. Now what could change that? If there's a big change in commodity prices. If commodity prices go up again, as they did from 2007 to 2014, we could see a different story. We could see assessed values not decline, or we could see them eventually even rise again. But the expectation from the folks who know about this stuff are for continued relatively low corn and bean prices out into the early 2020s. If that's what happens, then we wind up in the $1,200 range for the base rate. Farmland assessments will fall about $50 million in Carroll County in 2019, about $140 million by 12% in 2022. With unchanged levies, this would raise the tax rates of Carroll local governments. Increases are greatest for the school corporations and smallest for the cities and towns. They're greatest for the school corporations partly because they've got a lot of farmland, and partly because their rates start out at relatively high. Compared to other units like the county and like the townships. The smallest for cities and towns because even though their rates are relatively high, there's hardly any assessed value of farmland in those units. The tax district rates are the ones that count for the tax cap credits though. Tax district rates paid by taxpayers will rise an additional 3 to 7 cents in 2019 and 10 to 22 cents in 2022. This will shift tax burdens to homeowners and businesses. So as farmers pay less, homeowners and businesses pay more. Those property tax owners would see an additional 3% tacked on to whatever else is happening in their tax bills in 2019 and an additional 9% or so in 2022. Farmland owners would see a 5% tax bill decrease in 19 and 16% in 2022. Higher tax rates mean more taxpayers will reach their tax caps, and tax cap credits, which bring those tax bills down to those caps, Increased about 50,000 for all of the local units in Carroll County in 2019, and 150,000 for all of the local units in 2022. Carroll County, Delphi City, Delphi Schools will see the biggest losses. There you go. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Yes, are there any projections as to residential assessments, business assessments, all those other classes outside of farmland to get a better prediction?
Well, I didn't do them. One could, look at the history over the last several years and see if we couldn't project that forward. We do know that the maximum levy is going to be rising between 3.5% and 4%. For the, well, certainly next year it'll be about 3.6 or 3.7, I think it will be. And beyond that, as long as there's no recession, we should see approximately 4% increases. So we've got that. So a 4% increase. So what happens to total assessed value as levies are going up 4%? If they're going up less than 4%, then we'd see a gradual rise in tax rates, and this would be in addition to that. But I don't really have any. I certainly know. If I was going to do that, the only way I could do it would be to kind of trend what has been happening in Carroll County. And so since I wanted to just look at the farmland, I didn't do that.
A couple things on your second slide.
All right, all the way to the top. For Carroll?
Yeah. So when the state is seeing a greater decrease in the net assessed value than the net tax after credits, but Carroll County has the inverse. So we're just hitting more caps.
Well, yeah, what is happening? So I could look very foolish here trying to guess what's going on, but that's okay. And I always try to I always worry a little bit when I start talking about what's going on in the county to people who actually live in the county. But let me see what I think I can see up here. First of all, you've got a bigger increase or a slightly bigger increase in the assessed value of farmland, but farmland is so much more important in Carroll County than it is statewide. Statewide, it's only about 10%. Here, it's 33%. So this increase here is the main explanation for why the total increased more in Carroll than it did in the rest of the state. If the assessed value went up, that means tax rates either didn't rise as fast as they did in the rest of the state, or actually declined, which gives you this bigger drop in homestead taxes than you had statewide. Other residential, I don't know, and you have to tell me, I don't know that there's been a lot of construction of rental housing. One thing that happened, and one thing that distorts the other residential and homesteads, you may remember the homestead verification effort that we made at the beginning of this decade. And we sent out forms to everybody saying, is your homestead, is your home, is it really an owner-occupied primary residence? And we got the results back, and what happened was, it turned out that statewide there were thousands and thousands of parcels that had been classified as homesteads, which turned out were actually rentals or second homes or something, and were sort of declassified, which meant they moved from the homestead category to the other residential category. Some of this increase here might be reclassification from homestead to other residential. So that might be part of that. The ag business land going up only 35% compared to the bigger increase, that's the decline in the rate. So the irony about what happens here when the assessed value of farmland went up or when it goes down is in a county like Carroll, when assessed value of farmland changes, your tax rates change a lot. In an urban county, Tippecanoe, even though there's plenty of farmland in Tippecanoe County, the fact that there's a Subaru plant and an Alcoa plant and all of the factories plus all that high value housing means that even though there's thousands of acres of farmland, it's a very tiny part of total assessed value. And so homeowners, businesses in Tippecanoe won't notice a bit that this will happen in Tippecanoe, or any urban or suburban county that will be true. So what that means is that, yes, you have a big increase in assessed value, but your tax rates go down more, and so the increase in taxes for farmers and for everybody turns out to be a little smaller than it would have been otherwise. The other thing that stood out was this one right here. This is very strange looking. We have an impact, the number was is blanked out there. But we have an increase here of about 12% in gross, and then 36% in net. And the only way I know that that can happen is if some deduction disappeared. Did an abatement go away sometime between 2007 and 2017? Did you give an abatement to some business that disappeared?
Grain bin and grain dryer
Maybe it's that. That seems like a little big, change for just a grain dryer. I wonder whether Indiana Packers might have had some abatement or something.
One more way, we gave another one.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well, I'm not sure what it is, but that's, the fact that the net goes up more than the gross, the difference between the two is deductions. If the net's going up faster, deductions must be disappearing. So I don't know what it was, but that's the explanation on that. So, when I look at this, those are the kinds of things that I see that would create differences from the state graph.
Would those other residential be like all the homes on the lake?
Yes.
That aren't occupied?
Yep. Second homes, vacation homes would be in that category. In most counties, rental dominates. You do plenty of rental housing for all those students. But in certain places, here, White County, Kosciuszko, Brown, there's an awful lot of vacation homes. And you see that as an important part of the total.
What does this mean in real dollars to the county?
You mean in I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I'm guessing, what do we have to spend? Or we have to spend less in order to have the same service, try to have the same service for less money, or?
So the 6.3% here, or do you mean the totals?
Just in general?
Okay, well, that's oof. Let me get back to this. Let me get back here. That's what this is an attempt to look at. How much revenue, how much less revenue we have. So where does less revenue come in? In our system, and this is hard, it's sometimes hard to get your head around this, and I have to stop and think about it every time I think about it. Remember, it's the maximum levy that sets the limit on how much revenue that you can raise from the property tax. Every unit of government is subject to the maximum levy. The maximum levy rises 3.5% to 4% per year now. In the near future, that's what it's going to be. And so whatever's happening to assessed value, that levy can go up by that amount. And if assessed value is not growing, well, the rates will just rise in order to allow that revenue to go up. I just wrote a column, in fact, asking what would happen if Amazon located in Indiana. And you might think, well, it's going to be this huge bonanza of revenue. Well, now there would be a huge bonanza of revenue because the maximum levy still goes up only 4%. The tax rate would go way down because you wouldn't have to tax everybody else. You could tax Amazon in order to get that money, but you wouldn't get a whole lot of additional revenue. And so in terms of revenue, the maximum levy is the main thing that determines how much you get. The tax caps, on the other hand, say if the maximum levy is going up, but in order to get there,